3 hours after the battle ended, the Council Station was buzzing with activity. Repair crews worked to fix damage from Ravager attacks that had never reached their targets. Medical teams treated the few wounded while engineers checked systems that had been strained by the emergency. But most of the activity was not about repairs or injuries. It was about the humans. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the main council chamber, still wearing his combat uniform. The blue fabric showed scorch marks from a small fire that had broken out on the bridge during the battle. His gray hair was messy and his hands were dirty from helping with emergency repairs. He looked nothing like the polite diplomats that usually spoke in this elegant room. Around him, the alien delegates who had been mocking humanity just days before now looked at him with something close to fear. They had watched the entire battle through their sensors, seen one human ship destroy an entire Ravager hive fleet. It was something that should have been impossible. Commander Sektar of the Thorak fleet was the first to speak. His black scales had turned a lighter color, which meant deep respect in his species. His yellow eyes, which had glowed with amusement during the demonstration, now showed only serious attention. "Captain Morrison," Sektar said, his voice completely different. "From before, I must apologize for my words yesterday. We called your weapons primitive. We called your ship crude. We were wrong about everything." The Zephyrian delegate stood up from her chair. Her skin, which changed colors with her emotions, was now a deep blue that meant humility and respect. When she spoke, her musical voice had lost all traces of the mockery from before. "Captain, your vessel saved every life on this station. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid. But I must ask, how did you know how to fight the Ravagers so effectively? Our weapons are useless against them." Jake looked around the room at the alien faces. Some were humanoid, others were so strange he could barely understand their expressions, but all of them were watching him with the same intensity, waiting for his answer. "The Ravagers adapt to energy weapons," Jake said simply. "Your plasma, cannons, and laser arrays become useless after a few shots because their bioarmor learns to defend against them. But you cannot adapt to physics." Admiral Kaylin of the Velkari stepped forward. She was tall and graceful, with long arms and a neck that made her look almost like a swan. Her people were known throughout the galaxy for their wisdom and diplomatic skills. When she spoke, other races listened. "Captain, your railguns use simple kinetic energy, mass times velocity. But the power required to accelerate projectiles to such speeds should be enormous. How does a ship as small as yours generate that much energy?" Jake smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "Admiral, we use the same fusion reactors that power our cities. We just use them differently. Instead of making electricity, we use the power to create magnetic fields strong enough to throw chunks of metal at near light speed." "But the energy requirements," protested a delegate from the Centauri Republic. "Our calculations show that such weapons should drain your entire power grid with each shot." "They do," Jake admitted. "That is why we built bigger reactors." Commander Grant entered the chamber at that moment, carrying a data tablet with the battle damage report. She walked up to Jake and handed him the tablet, then remained standing at attention beside him. "Commander Grant," Admiral Kaylin said, "your tactical coordination during the battle was extraordinary. How did you know exactly where to position your ship for maximum effectiveness?" Lisa looked at the assembled aliens, then at her captain. Jake nodded, giving her permission to speak. "Ma'am, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We have studied every kind of battle, from ancient sword fights to modern space combat. We know that position and timing matter more than superior technology. But you were outnumbered. 43-1, the Thorak delegate pointed out. No tactical advantage should overcome such odds." "Respectfully, sir," Lisa replied, "you are thinking like someone who has never fought for survival. When humans are threatened, we do not fight for honor or glory. We fight to win by any means necessary." Ambassador Phillips, who had been standing, quietly near the back of the room, stepped forward. She had watched the entire battle from the station's command center, and her face still showed the amazement she had felt watching the Defiant tear through the Ravager fleet. "The aliens have always seen human weapons as crude and primitive," Phillips said. "They prefer clean energy weapons and precise tactics, but human warfare developed differently. We learned to use whatever worked, not whatever looked impressive," the Zephyrian delegate's skin shifted to a pale green color that indicated confusion. "But surely there must be more to it than just kinetic weapons and nuclear missiles. The way your ship moved, the coordination of your attacks, the boarding defense, it was like watching a completely different kind of warfare." Jake looked out through the chamber's transparent walls at the debris field where the Ravager fleet had died. Chunks of bioship hull drifted in space like the remains of some ancient sea monster. In the distance, the UNS Defiant hung motionless among the wreckage, its hull scarred but intact. "You are right," Jake said finally. "It is a different kind of warfare. You see, all of your races developed space travel before you learned to make really effective weapons. You went to the stars while you were still peaceful. But humans spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other before we ever left Earth." The chamber fell completely silent. Jake could see the aliens processing this information, trying to understand what it meant. "Every human weapon, every tactic, every strategy has been tested in real combat against other humans," Jake continued. "We did not develop our military technology in laboratories or computer simulations. We developed it in wars where millions died and entire civilizations fell." Commander Sektar's scales darkened as he understood. "You learned warfare from fighting yourselves." "For 6,000 years of recorded history," Jake confirmed. "We fought with sticks and stones, then bronze and iron, then gunpowder and steel, then nuclear weapons and guided missiles. By the time we reached space, we had already learned every lesson that war could teach." The voting that followed was unlike anything in the Council's history. Instead of debating humanity's worthiness as military partners, the alien delegates found themselves asking detailed questions about human weapons, tactics, and military philosophy. "Your nuclear weapons," asked the Centauri delegate. "They are designed for area destruction rather than precise targeting?" "When you are fighting for your life," Jake replied, "precision becomes less important than stopping power." "And your boarding tactics?" inquired Admiral Kalin. "We assume the enemy wants to kill us," Lisa answered, "so we try to kill them first." The final vote was unanimous. Not only was humanity accepted as a military member of the Galactic Council, but the aliens immediately requested that humans establish a joint military academy to teach alien officers human combat methods. "We have much to learn from you," Admiral Kalin admitted as the session ended. "Our technology may be more advanced, but your understanding of warfare is centuries ahead of ours." As Jake prepared to leave the chamber, Commander Sektar approached. Him one final time, the Thorak officer's expression was serious and thoughtful. "Captain Morrison, I have one last question. During the battle, when the odds were impossible and defeat seemed certain, why did you not retreat with the rest of us?" Jake looked at the alien commander for a long moment. "Commander, in human history, we have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. The Ravagers came here to destroy innocent lives. We could not let that happen, even if it meant your own death. Especially then." As the UNS Defiant prepared to depart Kepler Prime, it no longer flew alone. A full honor guard of alien vessels surrounded the human ship, their weapons powered. Down in salute. The laughter had stopped forever. The respect had begun. And throughout the galaxy, other hostile forces would soon learn what the Ravagers had discovered too late. Never underestimate the humans and their brutal, primitive, devastatingly effective way of war. The huge space station hung in the darkness above Kepler Prime like a giant crystal flower. Its white towers stretched out in all directions, catching the light from the nearby star and throwing it back in rainbow colors. ships from dozens of different worlds were docked to the station's many arms. Some looked like they were grown rather than built. Others were sharp and angular like knives. A few were so big they could hold entire cities inside them. Captain Jake Morrison pressed, his face against the small window of his ship, and watched the alien vessels with careful eyes. His ship, the UNS Defiant, looked very different from all the others. Where the alien ships were smooth and shiny, his was covered in metal plates that had been welded together. You could see every seam and rivet. The hull was gray and scratched from years of use. Next to the beautiful alien ships, it looked like something built in a junkyard. "Captain, you look worried," said Commander Lisa Grant as she walked up behind him. She was holding a small computer tablet and wore the same blue uniform as Jake. Her brown hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and her green eyes showed concern for her commanding officer. Jake turned away from the window and looked at Lisa. He was a tall man with gray hair and lines around his eyes from years of squinting at star charts. His hands were rough from working on ship repairs, not smooth like the hands of officers who never got dirty. "Not worried," Jake said slowly. "Just thinking about whether they will take us seriously." Lisa looked out at the alien fleet through the window. "Our ship has gotten us this far, Captain. The Defiant may not look pretty, but she works." Jake nodded but did not smile. The human race had been trying to join the Galactic Council for 5 years now. They had been allowed to trade and visit alien worlds, but they had never been accepted as equals. The aliens thought humans were too young, too primitive, too violent to be trusted with real responsibility. Today was supposed to change all that. The council was meeting to decide if humans could become military partners, but Jake knew that. Many of the alien leaders thought human weapons and ships were jokes. On the station, Ambassador Karen Phillips was already in the main meeting room facing the alien representatives. She was a small woman with short blonde hair and blue eyes, but she had a strong voice and a stronger will. She had spent 3 years learning alien languages and customs, preparing for this moment. The meeting room was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. Representatives from 12 different alien races sat in a circle around a floating platform in the center. Each delegation had their own special chairs and breathing equipment to make them comfortable. Zephyrian representative spoke first. She was tall and thin with skin that changed colors like oil on water. When she spoke, her voice was like music, but there was something cold underneath the pretty sounds. "The humans asked to help defend our worlds," the Zephyrian said, her skin shifting to purple and gold. "But look at their ships. They are made of simple metal, welded together like children's toys. How can such crude machines protect anyone?" A ripple of what might have been laughter went through the alien delegates. The thorac representative, a large creature covered in black scales, made a hissing sound that Jake's translator turned into words. "Their weapons shoot pieces of metal," the thorac said, his yellow eyes glowing with amusement. "Metal chunks. Our energy shields make such primitive attacks useless. A child could defend against human weapons." Ambassador Phillips kept her face calm, but Jake could see her jaw muscles tighten through the video feed to his ship. She had expected this kind of reception, but it still hurt to hear Earth's best efforts dismissed so easily. The Velkari ambassador was different from the others. She looked almost human, except for her extra-long arms and neck. Her people were known for being diplomatic and fair, but even she seemed doubtful. "Perhaps," the Velkari said in a gentle voice, "humans would be better suited to peaceful work. Cargo transport, maybe, or mining operations. Fighting requires technology and experience that takes centuries to develop." More sounds of alien amusement filled the room. Some delegates made clicking noises. Others whistled or hummed. The universal translator did its best, but Jake could tell they were all laughing at humanity's expense. Ambassador Phillips stood up from her chair. She was much smaller than any of the aliens in the room, but she held herself straight and spoke clearly. "I understand your concerns," she said. "Our technology may look different from yours. Our methods may seem simple, but perhaps actions speak louder than appearances. I propose a demonstration." The room fell quiet for a moment. Then the Zephyrian representative made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. The translator called it laughter. "A demonstration?" the Zephyrian asked, her skin now bright orange with swirls of blue. "Against what target?" "Your little metal ship would not survive even one shot from our smallest scout vessel." The Thorac delegate's scales rattled as he laughed. "This should be recorded for our military academies. A perfect example of primitive thinking." Even the usually polite Velkari ambassador seemed amused. "Dear Ambassador Phillips, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but we cannot allow you to waste your only ship in a hopeless gesture." More alien laughter filled the room. Some delegates were now openly pointing at the human ambassador and making comments to each other in their own languages. The translators did not bother converting these remarks, but their meaning was clear. Enough. Jake watched the video feed from his ship and felt his anger building. These aliens had never faced a real fight. Their wars were polite affairs with rules and ceremonies. They shot energy beams at each other until someone's shields failed, then the loser would surrender with honor. They had never learned what humans knew about warfare. "Let them laugh," Jake said quietly to Lisa. "Tomorrow we will show them what human engineering can really do." Lisa looked at her captain with concern. "Sir, we will be facing their best ships. Ships designed by races that have been building them for thousands of years." Jake turned back to the window and watched a Thorac destroyer glide past. It was beautiful in its own way, black as space with glowing weapon ports along its sides. It looked deadly and elegant at the same time. "Lisa," Jake said, "those ships were designed by people who have never had to fight for their lives. We humans have been killing each other with better and better weapons since we learned to throw rocks. Trust me, when the time comes, the Defiant will surprise them." Deep in space, far beyond the range of any sensor on the station, something else was watching the gathering of ships. The Ravager scouts had found the largest collection of prey they had seen in 50 years. Behind them, a massive fleet was already changing course toward Kepler Prime. The aliens would soon learn that there were much worse things in the galaxy than human weapons, and they would discover that sometimes crude and primitive was exactly what you needed to survive. The first Ravager scout ship died before it even knew what hit it. The creature was the size of a small building, with wings that looked like torn leather and a mouth full of acid-spitting weapons. It flew straight at the Defiant like an angry wasp, expecting the human ship to either run away or try to fight with energy weapons that it could adapt to. Instead, a tungsten slug moving at 12% of light speed punched through the bioship's living hull and turned its insides into soup. The creature convulsed once and then went limp, drifting dead in space. "Target down," Alex reported from his sensor station. "Switching to next target." Jake Morrison watched the tactical display as more Ravager ships rushed toward them. The creatures were not used to enemies that fought back effectively. For centuries, they had conquered peaceful alien races by overwhelming them with numbers and biological superiority. Their bioarmor could adapt to energy weapons, making them nearly invincible against conventional alien technology. But humans had never been conventional. "Fire at will," Jake ordered. "Take down as many of the small ones as you can before the big ships get here." The Defiant's weapons came alive. Railguns fired solid slugs that could not be adapted to or absorbed. Each shot was a kinetic kill, pure physics that worked the same way everywhere in the universe. The Ravager scouts, expecting to face plasma, cannons and energy beams, found themselves dying faster than they could react. "Lisa, bring us around to port. I want a clear shot at that cruiser-class bioship." "Aye, Captain." Commander Grant replied, her hands steady on the controls despite the chaos around them. "Coming about to bearing 180. The cruiser-class Ravager was 3 times the size of the Scouts, with a hull that pulsed like a giant heart. Acid weapons along its sides opened and closed like mouths, spraying corrosive streams into space. The creature was beautiful in its own horrible way, like a deep-sea monster that had learned to swim among the stars. The nuclear missiles hit it first. Unlike energy weapons, nuclear fire could not be adapted to. The fusion warheads detonated against the bioship's hull in brilliant flashes of white light. Where alien weapons might have been absorbed or deflected, the nuclear explosions simply cooked the living tissue from the inside out. The cruiser writhed in space like a wounded animal, its hull cracking and bleeding some kind of green fluid. Then the railguns finished it off, punching through the weakened armor and destroying the creature's vital organs. "Another target down," Alex announced. "Captain, the large ships are getting closer. The Queen ship is launching more attack pods." Through the main screen, Jake could see the massive Queen ship in the distance. It was giving birth to new vessels even as the battle raged, pushing smaller bioships out of openings in its sides, like a spider laying eggs. Hundreds of attack pods were now swarming toward the Defiant. "Point defense systems, engage all incoming pods," Jake ordered. The ship's laser arrays came to life, sweeping space with beams of coherent light. These were not the weak laser weapons that aliens used for ship-to-ship combat. They were industrial, cutting tools designed to slice through asteroid metal for mining operations. The Ravager attack pods, expecting to face conventional weapons, were cut apart like insects in a web. "Captain, we have boarding pods attempting to attach to our hull," Lisa reported. "Section 7 and 12. Jake smiled grimly. The Ravagers wanted to take the ship intact so they could study human technology and use the crew for their breeding programs. They were about to learn why boarding a human warship was a very bad idea. Send Lieutenant Rogers and his Marines to deal with the boarders. Deep in the ship's corridors, Lieutenant Danny Rogers and his squad were already moving toward the breach points. Rogers was a big man with scars on his hands from years of combat training. His Marines were armed with weapons that no alien had ever seen before. Kinetic rifles that fired solid bullets, explosive grenades that used chemical reactions instead of energy. Weapons that had been developed during humanity's long history of warfare against itself. The Ravager boarding troops were designed to fight alien security forces armed with stunners and energy weapons. They were not prepared for humans who shot to kill with bullets that could punch through bioarmor. "Contact, port side airlock," Rogers reported over the communication system. "Multiple hostiles. They are some kind of giant insect things with claws and acid spit." The sound of gunfire echoed through the ship's corridors. The aliens listening to the radio chatter had never heard anything like it. Their weapons made clean humming sounds or precise zapping noises. Human weapons sounded like thunder, rapid-fire explosions that spoke of violence and death. "Hostiles down," Rogers reported a few minutes later. "These things bleed green, and they do not like bullets very much." On the bridge, Jake coordinated the battle with cold efficiency. The Defiant moved through the Ravager formation like a shark, among fish. Every shot from its weapons killed or crippled an enemy vessel. The bioships, designed to fight energy weapons, had no defense against kinetic slugs and nuclear fire. "Alex, status on the Queen ship?" "Still alive and launching more pods, Captain. But we have destroyed most of its escorts. I count 37 enemy vessels down, 6 still active. Lisa, take us straight at the Queen ship, full power to engines." "And weapons." The Defiant accelerated toward the massive bio-vessel, its railguns charging for a full power shot. The Queen ship was the size of a small city with hundreds of weapon ports and launch bays covering its hull. It was the most dangerous creature in the Ravager fleet, capable of destroying entire planets by itself. But it had never faced a human warship. The railguns fired simultaneously, sending 6 tungsten slugs into the Queen ship's forward section. The kinetic impacts tore through the living hull like bullets through flesh, creating massive wounds that bled atmosphere and smaller bioships into space. Nuclear missiles followed, detonating inside the wounds and cooking the creature's internal organs. The Queen ship convulsed, its hull cracking along its entire length. Smaller Ravager vessels that had been attached to its sides were thrown free, dying as their life support systems failed. "Captain, the Queen ship is breaking apart," Alex reported with excitement in his voice. "Its biosystems are shutting down." The massive creature gave one final shudder and went still. Its hull split open like a cracked egg, spilling the remains of unborn bioships into the vacuum. The smaller Ravager vessels, seeing their queen die, began to retreat in panic. "All enemy vessels are fleeing," Alex announced. "We did it, Captain. We actually did it." Jake looked at the tactical display showing the Ravager fleet in full retreat. Space around them was littered with the corpses of bioships, their living hulls now cold and dead. The Defiant hung among the wreckage, its own hull scarred and blackened but still intact. The alien communication channels, which had been silent during the battle, suddenly came alive with excited chatter. Commander Sektar's voice was filled with disbelief. "Defiant, this is impossible. One ship against an entire hive fleet. How did you do this?" Jake looked out at the fleeing Ravager ships and allowed himself a small smile. "Commander, humans have been perfecting the art of war for thousands of years. We learned long ago that the best defense is a good offense." The battle was over, but the real victory was just beginning. 6 months after the battle at Kepler Prime, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The human military academy on the moon of Centauri 7 was now the most sought-after training facility in known space. Alien officers from dozens of worlds came to learn what they called the human way of war. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the Academy's main briefing room, looking out at a class of 40 alien students. There were Zephyrians with their color-changing skin, Thorax with their black scales, Velkari with their long necks, and representatives from races he was still learning to recognize. All of them hung on his every word as he explained basic human military doctrine. "The first rule of human warfare," Jake said, pointing to words written on the wall behind him, "is that there are no rules. Your enemy will not fight fair, so neither should you." A young Zephyrian officer raised her hand. Her skin was bright yellow with curiosity markings. "Captain Morrison, this seems to contradict everything we learned about honorable combat. How can victory have meaning without honor?" Jake smiled at the question. He had heard it many times over the past months. "Lieutenant Zara, tell me what honor means when your people are dead and your cities are burning." The room fell silent. The alien officers were still struggling with human concepts of total warfare. They had been raised on stories of glorious battles where opposing forces met in open space and fought according to ancient codes of conduct. "But Captain," spoke up a Thorac major named Grex, "surely some rules must apply. What about protecting civilians? What about surrendering enemies?" "We protect our civilians by killing the enemy before they can reach them," Jake replied. "As for surrendering enemies, we accept surrender when it is genuine. But we also know that an enemy who surrenders today may try to kill us tomorrow." Commander Lisa Grant entered the classroom carrying a data tablet. She had been promoted to the Academy's head of tactical instruction after her performance at Kepler Prime. The alien students respected her almost as much as they feared her. "Sorry to interrupt, Captain," Lisa said, "but we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. The hegemony has attacked 3 more colonies." Jake frowned. The hegemony was an aggressive empire that had been expanding into council space for the past year. Their ships were fast and their weapons were powerful, but they had never faced human tactics. "How many ships?" Jake asked. 12 heavy cruisers and support vessels. They hit the colonies at Tau Ceti, Ross 154, and Wolf 359. No survivors. The alien students looked shocked. The hegemony had been making threats for months, but no one expected them to actually attack civilian targets. "Captain," said Major Grex, "the Council fleet nearest to that sector has only 6 ships. Even with human weapons, they will be badly outnumbered." Jake looked at his students thoughtfully. "Class, this gives us a perfect opportunity for a practical lesson. Who can tell me the first thing we should do when facing a superior enemy force?" A Velkari lieutenant named Kale raised his long arm. "Retreat and call for reinforcements?" "Wrong," Jake said firmly. "The first thing we do is figure out how to win anyway." Lisa activated the room's holographic display, showing a 3-dimensional map of the attacked sector. Red dots marked the hegemony fleet positions while blue dots showed friendly forces. "The enemy has better ships and more firepower," Lisa explained. "But they also have weaknesses. Who can spot them?" The students studied the display for several minutes. Finally, Lieutenant Zara spoke up. "Their ships are spread out across 3 systems. They are not supporting each other." "Excellent," Jake said. "What else?" "They attacked civilian targets," added Major Grex. "This means they want to cause fear, not just military damage." "Good. And what does that tell us about their psychology?" A quiet Centauri ensign named Vel raised her hand. "They think we will be too scared to fight back effectively." Jake smiled. "Exactly. The hegemony has studied alien tactics. They know that most council races prefer defensive warfare and limited engagements. They expect us to react predictably. But we are not going to react predictably," Lisa continued. "We are going to do what humans do best. We are going to attack when they least expect it, where they least expect it, and with methods they have never seen before." The holographic display changed to show a new tactical situation. Jake manipulated the controls to move friendly forces into attack positions. "The hegemony fleet commander is named Admiral Korath," Jake explained. "He has won 17 battles using the same basic strategy: fast attack, overwhelming firepower, quick withdrawal. He has never faced an enemy that fights back the way humans do." "What do you mean, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Zara. "He has never faced an enemy that is willing to sacrifice 1 ship to destroy 3. He has never fought people who see retreat as just another way to set up an ambush. He has never met soldiers who consider dying for their cause to be an acceptable outcome." Jake turned back to his students. "I want you to work in teams and develop attack plans for each hegemony position. Remember what you have learned about human tactics. Think like predators, not prey." For the next 2 hours, the alien officers worked together to create battle plans. Jake and Lisa moved between the groups, offering advice and corrections. It was amazing to see how quickly the aliens were adapting to human methods. The Zephyrian team proposed using stealth ships to get close to enemy vessels before attacking with nuclear weapons. The Thorak group suggested creating fake distress signals to lure hegemony ships into ambushes. The Velkari team developed a plan to attack the enemy supply lines rather than their main fleet. "These are all good plans," Jake said when the exercise was finished. "But they all share one common element. Can anyone tell me what it is?" Major Grex thought for a moment. "They all involve deception." "Correct. Human warfare is built on the idea that if your enemy knows what you are going to do, you are probably doing the wrong thing." A communication alert sounded in the classroom. Admiral Keelin's image appeared on the main screen, calling from the Velkari flagship somewhere near the front lines. "Captain Morrison," the Admiral said, "the Council has voted to authorize immediate action against the hegemony forces. Your Academy graduates who are serving with the fleet are requesting permission to implement human tactical doctrine." Jake looked at his current students, then back at the Admiral. "Admiral, my recommendation is to let them do exactly that, but make sure all friendly forces understand that human tactics can be intense." "Understood, Captain." Admiral Keilin, out. As the communication ended, Jake turned back to his class. "Students, you are about to see everything we have taught you put into practice. The officers who graduated from this academy 6 weeks ago are now serving on council ships throughout the galaxy. Today, they will show the hegemony what happens when you attack innocent people while humans are watching. Lieutenant Zara's skin turned bright orange with excitement. Captain, will we be able to observe the battle? You will do better than observe, Lisa said with a grim smile. You will analyze every move, every decision, every outcome. This will be your final examination in practical human warfare. Jake looked out the window at the stars beyond Centauri 7. Somewhere out there, alien officers trained by humans were about to go into battle against an enemy that had never faced such tactics. Class dismissed, Jake said quietly. Report to the Tactical Center in 1 hour. You are about to learn why the galaxy stopped laughing at human methods. As the students filed out, chattering excitedly in their various languages, Jake and Lisa remained behind. Think they are ready for this? Lisa asked. Jake watched the last alien officer leave the room. Lisa, 6 months ago these same species were mocking us as primitive barbarians. Now they are asking us to teach them how to fight. I think they are as ready as anyone can be. And the hegemony? Jake's expression hardened. The hegemony is about to learn the same lesson the Ravagers learned. When you threaten innocent people, humans take it personally. The Academy's communications center was already buzzing with activity, as reports came in from the front lines. The real test of human military doctrine was about to begin. The next morning came quickly. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant and watched the asteroid field through the main screen. Huge chunks of rock floated in the darkness, some as big as mountains. The asteroids had been here for millions of years, slowly spinning in their ancient dance around Kepler Prime. Today, this peaceful place would become a battlefield. Captain, we are approaching the test area, said Lieutenant Commander Alex Murphy from his position at the sensor station. Alex was young, maybe 25, with red hair and freckles that made him look even younger. But his eyes were sharp, and he never missed anything on his instruments. Good, Jake replied. Lisa, bring us to the coordinates they gave us. Commander Lisa Grant worked at her station, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. Coming about to bearing 270. We should see the target ship in about 3 minutes. The target was an old Thorak cruiser that had been retired from service. Even though it was no longer used for fighting, it was still an impressive sight. The ship was 300 meters long and covered in black armor that gleamed like polished stone. Weapon ports lined its sides, though they were now empty and dark. The Thorax had built this ship to last, and even after 20 years it looked dangerous. There she is, Lisa said as the old cruiser appeared on their screen. The Shadow Blade, Thorak heavy cruiser built for deep space combat. Armor plating is 2 meters thick, designed to stop plasma cannon fire. Jake nodded. The alien ships were built like fortresses, with heavy armor and powerful shields. They were made to fight other aliens who used energy weapons and plasma cannons. But humans had taken a different path. The communication system crackled to life. Commander Sektar's voice came through the speakers with barely hidden amusement. Sektar commanded the Thorak destroyer Void Render, one of the most advanced ships in their fleet. His ship hung in space 2 kilometers away, its weapons powered. Down, but its sensors recording everything. Human vessel Defiant, Sektar said. You may begin your demonstration when ready. We are quite eager to see what your primitive weapons can accomplish. Through the radio, Jake could hear other alien officers talking and laughing in the background. They were treating this like entertainment, not a serious test of human capability. Copy that, Commander, Jake replied, keeping his voice calm. We will begin our attack run shortly, Jake turned to his crew. The bridge of the Defiant was small and cramped compared to alien ships. Everything was built for function, not beauty. Gray metal walls were covered with screens and control panels. Red lights blinked in the corners, showing system status. It looked more like a submarine than a spaceship. Alex, what do our sensors show about the target? The cruiser is completely powered down, Captain, Alex reported. No shields, no defensive systems, but the armor is still intact. Thorac battle steel, rated to withstand direct hits from their heavy plasma cannons. Lisa, weapons status? All systems are ready, Captain, Lisa said, checking her displays. Railguns loaded with tungsten rounds, nuclear missile pods armed, and ready. Point defense lasers charged. We have enough firepower to level a small city. Jake smiled for the first time that day. The aliens thought human weapons were primitive because they did not use exotic energy or strange science. Humans used old-fashioned physics. Mass times velocity equals kinetic energy. Nuclear fusion equals big explosion. Simple ideas that worked very well. Take us in, Lisa. Combat speed. The Defiant turned toward the old Thorac cruiser and began to accelerate. The ship's engines were not as quiet or elegant as alien drives, but they were powerful. The acceleration pushed everyone back in their seats as the ship picked up speed. On the alien observation ships, officers watched with professional interest mixed with amusement. The human ship looked clumsy compared to their graceful vessels. Its movements were direct and simple, without the flowing curves that marked advanced spaceship design. "Look how it flies," one Zephyrian officer said to another, "like a thrown rock." "At least rocks know where they are going," his colleague replied, causing more laughter on their bridge. The Defiant closed the distance to the target quickly when they were 10 kilometers away. Jake gave the order they had all been waiting for. All weapons, fire. What happened next shocked every alien observer into complete silence. The railguns fired first. These weapons used magnetic fields to accelerate. Tungsten slugs to incredible speeds. The metal projectiles left the guns at 12% of light speed, faster than anything the aliens had ever seen. The rounds crossed the distance to the target in less than a second. The first slug hit the Thorac cruiser's armor and punched through it like it was made of paper. The tungsten round, moving at relativistic speed, carried so much kinetic energy that it turned solid metal into plasma on impact. A hole 5 meters wide appeared in the side of the target ship. Before the aliens could process what they had seen, the second railgun fired. Then the third. Each shot tore through the cruiser's supposedly impregnable armor, leaving glowing holes that vented atmosphere and debris into space. But the railguns were just the beginning. The missile pods opened and released their contents. Dozens of nuclear-tipped missiles streaked toward the target, their engines leaving bright trails in the darkness. These were not the clean, precise weapons that aliens preferred. These were human nuclear weapons, designed for maximum destruction. The missiles hit the cruiser in a series of brilliant flashes. Nuclear fire washed over the ship's hull, turning armor plating into gas and melting support beams into slag. Where the aliens used energy weapons that could be deflected or absorbed, humans used nuclear fusion itself as a weapon. The point defense lasers fired last, carving precise lines through what remained of the target. These lasers were not the weak beam weapons that aliens expected. They were industrial cutting tools adapted for combat, capable of slicing through ship hulls like knives through cloth. The entire attack lasted 47 seconds. When the light faded and the debris stopped flying, nothing remained of the Thorac cruiser except expanding clouds of superheated gas and small chunks of twisted metal. The ship that had been built to survive years of combat had been completely destroyed in less than a minute. The alien communication channels were completely silent. Jake looked at the empty space where the target had been. "Alex, sensor reading?" "No contacts, Captain," Alex said, his voice filled with quiet satisfaction. "Target completely destroyed. Lisa, damage to our ship?" "None, Captain. All weapon systems functioning normally. We used about 10% of our ammunition." Jake turned to the communication system. "Commander Sektar, demonstration complete. Target destroyed as requested. It took a long moment before Sektar's voice came back over the radio. When he spoke, all traces of amusement were gone. "Defiant, your weapons. How did you penetrate our armor so easily?" "Simple physics, Commander," Jake replied. "Mass times. Velocity! Your shields work against energy, but they cannot stop a solid object moving fast enough." Another voice broke into the channel. It was Admiral Kaelin, the Valkyrie fleet commander. "Human vessel, your nuclear weapons, they burn regardless of armor type?" "That is correct, Admiral. Nuclear fusion works the same way everywhere in the universe." For several minutes, no one spoke. The alien ships hung in space around the debris field, their sensors trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Finally, Commander Sektar spoke again. "Captain Morrison, I believe we owe you an apology. Your weapons are not primitive. They are terrifyingly effective." Jake was about to reply when Alex suddenly looked up from his sensor station with alarm written all over his face. "Captain, I am detecting multiple contacts incoming, large signatures bearing 27 Mark IV. "What kind of contacts?" Lisa demanded, her voice sharp with concern. Alex's face went pale as he read his instruments. "Ravager hive ships, ma'am. 43 vessels and closing fast." The demonstration was over. The real test was about to begin. 20 years had passed since the battle at New Terra. The galaxy was a different place now. Where once there had been only war between humans and Catherians, now there was an uneasy peace. Trade ships moved between human and alien worlds. Diplomats met in neutral zones to discuss treaties and agreements. But the memory of the Defiance lived on. Commander Alex Wright stood on the bridge of the UES Memorial, the newest and most advanced ship in the human fleet. Through the large windows, he could see the debris field where the old warship had made its final stand. Every year, human and Catherian ships came here to remember what had happened. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Tom Baker from the communications station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Catherian delegation ship." Alex nodded. "Put it through." The voice that came over the speakers was translated from the alien language by computer, but Alex could hear the respect in the original tone. "Commander Wright, this is Admiral Zakthul of the Catherian vessel Peacebringer. We request permission to approach the memorial site." "Permission granted, Admiral. Welcome back." Alex smiled slightly. Zakthul was the same alien commander who had led the attack on New Terra 20 years ago, the one who had ordered the retreat after watching the Defiance's sacrifice. Now he came here every year to pay his respects to the human crew who had died. The alien ship was beautiful in a strange way. Its crystal hull caught the light from New Terra's sun and scattered it into rainbow patterns, but it carried no weapons. The Catherians had learned that some enemies could not be conquered by force alone. On the planet below, New Terra had grown into a major human colony. The 15,000 people who had been saved now numbered over 2 million. Cities sprawled across continents that had once been empty wilderness. But in the center of the capital city stood a simple monument made of black stone. Mayor Ellen Rodriguez walked slowly around the memorial. She was the daughter of one of the original colonists. Born 3 months after the battle, she had grown up hearing stories about the brave crew who had died to save her world. Now she was old enough to have children of her own. Every name was carved into the stone. Captain Jake Morrison at the top, followed by all 43 crew members who had given their lives. Fresh flowers lay at the base of the monument. Someone came here every day to leave them. After 20 years, the people of New Terra had never forgotten. A young boy tugged at Ellen's sleeve. "Mama, tell me again about the spaceship." Ellen knelt down beside her 6-year-old son. "Which part do you want to hear, Tommy?" "The part where they flew into the big alien ship." "Were they scared?" Ellen thought about how to answer. She had heard this story 1,000 times from the survivors, from Dr. Kevin Walsh, who still lived on New Terra and ran the colony's main hospital, from the other crew members who had escaped in the pods before the final attack. "I think they were scared," Ellen said honestly. "But they did it anyway. That's what makes someone brave, not the absence of fear, but doing the right thing despite being afraid." "Will I be brave like them someday?" "You already are, sweetheart. Every day you choose to be kind to others, you're being brave like them." In Earth's capital city, President Sarah Johnson sat in her office reviewing reports from across human space. The war with the Catherians had officially ended 5 years ago with the signing of the Terra Accord. But the peace had really begun. 20 years earlier, in the debris field around New Terra, her aide, Marcus Chen, brought her the daily intelligence briefing. "Madam President, the joint human-Catherian expedition to the Andromeda Galaxy has reported another successful contact with a new species. The Zentorians seem interested in trade agreements." Sarah nodded. "Any signs of hostility?" "None, ma'am. If anything, they seem impressed by our alliance with the Catherians. A former enemy becoming a partner appears to carry significant diplomatic weight." Sarah understood why. The story of the Defiance had spread far beyond human and Catherian space. Other alien races had heard about the ship that fought 7 enemies and won through courage alone. About the peace that followed when both sides realized that some things were worth more than conquest. The tale had become legend, but it was a legend with real consequences. Young humans joined the space service hoping to live up to the example, set by Captain Morrison and his crew. Catherian military academies taught courses on human tactical thinking, emphasizing the importance of understanding an enemy's willingness to sacrifice. In the Catherian Empire's capital, a crystal city that floated among the clouds of a gas giant, Elder Talavesh addressed the ruling council. He was ancient even by alien standards, his crystal form clouded with age, but his mind was sharp as he spoke about the humans. 20 cycles have passed since the incident at New Terra, he said in the musical language of his people. Our analysis continues to evolve. We believe that superior technology guaranteed victory. The humans taught us otherwise. Council member Zendar, much younger and still ambitious, disagreed. Honored Elder, surely one battle does not justify abandoning our expansion plans. Humans are still primitive compared to us. Primitive in technology, perhaps, but not in spirit. Talvesh gestured to a holographic display showing the battle. Observe their final moments. They knew death was certain. Yet they charged forward. This was not madness. It was calculation of a different sort. They weighed their lives against the lives of strangers and chose sacrifice. One ship against our entire fleet. One ship that cost us more than we gained. The flagship destroyed. The fleet forced to retreat. Our reputation for invincibility shattered. And that was just the beginning. The humans' willingness to die for their beliefs made conquest impossible. How does one rule subjects who prefer death to slavery? The council chamber fell silent. This was the lesson the Catherians had learned the hard way. Some enemies could not be defeated by overwhelming force because they refused to accept defeat. Back in space, the Memorial and the Peacebringer drifted together near the debris field. Human and alien crews worked side by side, collecting pieces of wreckage to preserve in museums. Every fragment told part of the story of the last battle. Commander Wright received a personal message from Admiral Zach Thule. The alien wanted to meet privately on the Memorial. Alex agreed, curious about what the old warrior wanted to discuss. They met in the ship's observation lounge, a quiet room with large windows overlooking the debris field. Zach Thule looked older than Alex remembered. The alien's crystal features had dimmed with age, but his presence still commanded respect. "Commander Wright," Zach Thule said through his translator device. "I have a request that may seem strange." "Go ahead, Admiral." "I wish to leave something here, at the site where your Captain Morrison died." The alien reached into his robes and pulled out a small crystal tablet. This is a record of the battle from our perspective. I have written down what I felt that day, what I learned. Alex took the tablet. It was warm to the touch and seemed to glow with inner light. What does it say? That courage is not limited to one species. That honor transcends the boundaries between enemies. That sometimes the greatest victory is in knowing when to stop fighting. Alex nodded slowly. Where would you like to place it? Near the center of the debris field, where your ship struck ours, where two enemies became something more. Together they took a small shuttle to the exact coordinates where the Defiance had died. The wreckage was still there, twisted metal, and crystal forming a monument more beautiful than anything built by conscious design. Alex and Zach Thule released the crystal tablet into space, where it would drift forever among the remains of two ships that had changed the galaxy. As they returned to their vessels, both commanders knew they were witnessing the end of an era. The generation that had fought the war was aging. Soon, the story of the Defiance would pass into pure history, told by people who had not lived through those desperate times. But the legacy would endure, in the peace between their peoples, in the children who grew up believing that enemies could become friends, in the memory of 43 people who chose to die so that others might live. The warship was gone. The crew was dead. But their spirit lived on in every act of courage, every moment of sacrifice, every choice to do what was right rather than what was easy. The Defiance had fought to the last breath, and in doing so, had breathed life into a future none of them would live to see.